Some strange cases in my work as a psychologist. I have always been interested in how different people perceive the world around us, and so I decided to enroll in psychology. After studying for the required amount of time, I started working with a great desire to help people. I am a psychologist. I work in the city psychological service for the population. We also have a helpline, but this is a separate call center, and I work in a regular office. Any city resident can make an appointment for free as part of the city program. Before I talk about several strange cases in my practice, I would like to clarify something. Firstly, a psychologist is not a psychiatrist. Many people are confused and think that I will register a person as mentally ill or give out magic pills for the client's drinking husband. No, this is not my profile. Hallucinations, alcohol and drug addiction, various mental illnesses, these are not for me. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't see real psychos. The psychologist helps completely healthy people if something has gone wrong in their lives. Divorce, job loss, conflict with loved ones, problems of difficult teenagers. And the second point, many will be surprised, but a psychologist always has his own psychologist. It's called supervisor. If I ever want to kill these annoying clients or something else like that, I will definitely turn to the supervisor. In any case, I have to communicate with him from time to time to maintain my professional level. We also analyze particularly complex or interesting cases from practice. So, I have a case that I did not tell the supervisor about. I have to tell you, but it's too wild and strange, and I doubt they'll believe me. A young man of about 20, modest, with a somewhat lost look, came to see me. For a long time he could not begin a story, but I tried to calm him down, and he made up his mind. Alexei, let's call him that. Of course, for ethical reasons, I will change the name of clients and characters. Said that he now lives in a social shelter, simply put, a rooming house. He has no documents. A social worker from that same shelter sent him to me. She wanted me, after talking with the guy, to understand whether he has a mental disorder or whether his oddities are caused by something else. Alexei clearly believed that I would immediately send him, as he put it, to the madhouse if he told me a story. I barely managed to explain that I was not a psychiatrist, but I'm not sure that he fully understood the difference. So, Alexei claimed that he was born in a small village in 1955. Yes, he must have been 66 years old at the time, but he looked about 20, and he himself claimed to be 19. According to him, at the age of 18, in 1974, he joined the army. His service took place in one of the closed military camps in a certain secret unit. He served quietly for a year, and after a couple of months, he and 3 other soldiers were summoned to the commander. The commander ordered them to go to the facility to participate in testing a certain installation. The guys themselves knew nothing about working at the facility. Their task was only to guard it. But an order is an order. All 3 of them underwent a thorough medical examination. In turn, the first 2 of Alexei's colleagues went into a separate room, and it was his turn. He was ordered to go into a strange installation that resembled a huge iron safe with lights, various indicators and switches, the purpose of which was not clear to the soldier. When he went inside and stood motionless, the apparatus hummed deafeningly. There was a strong smell of ozone, and small sparks burst out from all the joints of the metal. Before Alexei had time to be properly frightened, something similar to an explosion happened, or, more precisely, the action of a shockwave when you are thrown out and you fly. Not understanding where is up and where is down, his vision went dark, and Alexei lost consciousness. When he came to his senses, he was lying alone in the middle of some wasteland. There were no people or buildings around. He felt fine, although it was cold outside and he was in his summer uniform. Alexei saw where the power lines led, and a few hours later he walked to the city. Then he decided that in some strange way, he had been transported to an enemy capitalist country. The streets were filled with foreign cars. People were dressed in strange clothes that were clearly not of Soviet design, and the signs on the shops were in both Russian and English. But soon he heard that everyone was speaking Russian. This puzzled Alexei, and he tried to find out what city it was. It turned out that he was located 1,200 kilometers from his place of service. But the most amazing thing was that this city turned out to be his home village, which he remembered as a complete outback. Of course, Alexei decided to go home and ask his parents to explain what happened to the village during his entire year of service in the army. Finding the right address turned out to be difficult. All the passers-by behaved strangely and looked at the guy not like an ordinary soldier, but like some kind of crazy person. And yet he managed to find the street and the house where he grew up. The yard had also changed. It was also filled with many foreign cars, with strange, non-Soviet license plates. Alexei went up to the floor and called his apartment, but instead of his mother or father, a stranger came out to him and said that they did not know him, but that he bought this apartment 9 years ago and has been living in it ever since. Alexei got angry and wanted to punch this impudent guy in the face, but he slammed the door right in front of him. He began knocking on the door with his fists and demanding to call his mother and father or tell him where they were. An elderly woman from a neighboring apartment jumped out at the noise. Although she looked strangely at Alexei's clothes, she said that the Ryabov family really lived in his apartment, but for a long time. Their son died in the army, an accident, something exploded, and he stood next to him. They say they buried an empty coffin. Nothing was left, but the military did not skimp. They covered all the expenses for the funeral. Tanka, his sister, married a Canadian and went to live with him. How so for a Canadian? Alexei was indignant. Well, in the 90s, many girls dreamed of marrying a foreigner. Tanka succeeded. Alexei did not know how to understand this, how a Soviet girl could marry a Canadian, and what kind of 90s the neighbor had in mind. And their parents had already died 10 years ago. Mary outlived her husband by 4 years. Tanka came, sold the apartment, and ran back over the hill. She has 2 children there. Alexei could not believe his ears, and for some reason decided to ask a stupid question. Excuse me, but here, in this house, Shirochka Kisleva also lived. She was so tall, she worked at a garment factory. Do you know where she is? The neighbor shrugged, but suddenly remembered. Ah, Shira. There is one, but she hasn't had that last name for a long time. There she is, Alexandra Ivanova, walking in the yard with her granddaughter. Alexei looked out the entrance window and saw a beautifully dressed gray-haired woman with a stroller in the courtyard. Despite the wrinkles and gray hair, he recognized in the elderly lady his fiancée, Shirochka, a slender girl with brown hair, which he liked to braid. Shira promised to wait for him from the army, and now she is gray-haired, pushing a stroller with her little granddaughter. Alexei became scared, and he, not making out the road, ran wherever his eyes looked. What was he supposed to do? To try to return to the unit, find the commander and ask what's going on? The guy rushed to the station, but they did not sell him a train ticket. His passport, a real normal passport of a citizen of the USSR, was called invalid by the boor at the cash register. Like his money, she said that this was the first time she had seen such a counterfeit. Alexei shouted that she was a fool and that she would be imprisoned for this, that he would write a report. But 2 guards simply threw him out of the station building. Alexei had no choice but to sit under some dirty canopy and think in despair what to do next. It was cold, and he almost froze without warm clothes. Oddly enough, homeless people helped him. Ordinary station homeless people. They found the guy some wildly dirty padded jacket and torn trousers, even treated him to white meat and poured him vodka. While drinking with them, Alexei told them what happened to him. The drinking buddies were not surprised, and one of them, Vasak, said that he would try to help. A few days later, which Alexei spent with the homeless at the station, a social patrol arrived, and Vasak dragged him there. Social workers distributed food to the homeless and invited those who wanted to go to a shelter. However, under the condition of prohibition. There were very few people willing to do this under this condition, but for Alexei it was a chance. At this social shelter, Alexei was given clean clothes. He was provided with a bed to sleep and food. They asked him if he wanted to restore his documents to get a job, but his USSR passport did not convince them that his documents were in order. After listening to his story, One of the employees of the social shelter referred Alexei to see me. After listening to all this, I thought it was one of two things. Either Alexei deliberately deceived everyone, including me, with the story, or he actually believes in it, and, therefore, suffers from some kind of psychological disorder, which I have to determine. In both cases, it will be useful for me to prove to the guy that he is not from the past at all. If this is a joke or a deception, then I will bring the sly person to light. And if this is some kind of delusional state, then evidence to the contrary will help the guy realize that he is not a Soviet soldier. At the next appointment, I asked him to bring his things, documents, money that he had with him. I prepared myself. Several streets in our city were renamed after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Instead of the names of communist figures, they were given neutral names. I found out their old names, and also studied some events of 1974 to 1975, which would probably be known to a person living at that time. I brought a figurine of an Olympic bear from home and placed it in my office. A few days later, Alexei came again. I studied his passport. In my opinion, it seemed quite real, although I, of course, am not an expert. I could say the same about the money of the USSR. The photo in the passport clearly depicted Alexei, or his twin. The clothing also looked authentic. As far as I could inspect it, it was a regular Soviet uniform. I made sure to find out in advance what a military uniform looked like in those years, and this is exactly what it was. Then I started talking to Alexei, simultaneously trying to find out what he knew. Several times he named streets that had been renamed, and mentioned them in passing. I asked where he studied, where the factory was, where his fiancée worked, where they met, and where they went on dates. If I mentioned the old name of the street, then Alexei obviously knew where it was, and if I named a new one, after the renaming, then he was clearly trying to remember where in the city it was located. I suggested calling one of my friends, and, as if by chance, I pushed the phone, an ordinary office device, towards him. I hoped that the guy would automatically pick up the phone and start dialing the number, but he looked at the phone as if it were an incomprehensible device and asked me with bewilderment how to use it. They started talking about how Alexei was accepted into the Pioneers. I said that I still kept my pioneer tie and took it out to show it, along with the Olympic bear. Here, I say, are childhood memories, and I look at his reaction. The guy was not surprised by the tie, but he looked at the bear with curiosity. And what's that? He speaks. Well, bear. Everyone has one in their houses. We, he says, didn't have that. And what are those rings he has? The Olympic symbol? Is he a foreigner? I realized that he did not know about the 1980 Olympics. Another thing that surprised me was the speech. Even in an ordinary conversation, in which a person is unlikely to think through every word, not a single modern expression slipped through his mind. When he asked if he could drink water, I told him that there was a cooler in the corridor. For a long time he could not understand what this word meant and what it should look like. Of course, he didn't figure out how to use the cooler and started unscrewing the bottle from the top. I barely had time to stop him and pour the water for him myself. He called. I look into the Blue Lakes, his favorite song. At my request, he could easily sing it. I was unable to find his sister. Not only did she, according to him, now live in Canada, but she also probably changed her last name and was unlikely to be registered anywhere. I found a paper map of Russia and invited him to show the location of his military unit on it. Asked how he drove to his place of service, what cities he passed through. Have you passed Kalinin? He says yes. Please show me. He searches on the map, obviously in the Ver area, but cannot find it. The map is modern. He says, it should be here. I don't understand. The same thing happened with the proposal to show other cities. How can a 19-year-old guy know what these cities are called now? How can a 19-year-old guy not know what these cities are called now? In a week, Alexei will come to me again. I don't know what to talk to him about. I have run out of ideas on how to prove to him that he is not an alien from the past. And the most frightening thing is that I have run out of confidence that he is allegedly mentally ill. fantasizing and inventing. I'm ready to admit that he's telling the truth, and that scares me. I also think about what happened to two of Alexei's colleagues who were also testers at the facility. Where did they end up? To the past? To the future? If I entertain such thoughts, doesn't that mean I'm also crazy, and I urgently need to tell my superior about everything? This scares me, and I don't know what I can do. But if Alexei is telling the truth, then what is happening scares him even more, and it is my duty to try and help him. Door to another basement. It's the 12th on the phone calendar, which means I've been here for 2 days already. I'll say right away, I am a respectable Soviet citizen, not a drug addict or an alcoholic. I am writing here because people here can believe me and still do everything as it should. I'm afraid the police will spit on my recommendations, and after a couple of groups disappear, the damn door will be welded shut, and then I will remain here forever. Or maybe they do. God knows. There are 2 doors in my entrance. One leads to the basement, which the boys and I crawled up and down, and the second was closed all the time. My father answered my questions that he himself did not know what was behind it. I assumed that it was some kind of transformer, or some other crap like that. In general, it didn't interest as much. The basement we knew was quite enough for games. In general, it all started with the fact that I returned from a hike and saw that the door was slightly open, and behind it I could see the stairs down. I don't know what came over me. I had the feeling that if I didn't find out what was behind it, I would never forgive myself for this. Now I think it was some kind of mischief, like a Venus flytrap, which attracts midges with its smell. Otherwise, I would probably have wondered where the staircase could lead, if our basement is known to me inside and out, and there was nothing like that there. Acrid darkness greeted me below. Not just dark, as it happens at night, but rather like when you move from a room with bright light into a dark room. You can't see a damn thing at all. Feeling for the flashlight hanging from my backpack, I turned it on and looked around the room in which I found myself. It was a long corridor ending in a fork. Some pipes stretched along the walls, like tubes in subway tunnels. The last doubts about whether it was worth going there were drowned out by the thought that this could be one of those technical entrances to the subway through which diggers actually get there. I thought that even if I didn't like it here, I could always sell this entrance to some extreme stalkers. The fork I saw was not the only one. I just pressed forward, choosing absolutely randomly where to turn. Then it seemed to me that if I wanted to return, there would be nothing difficult about it. In general, I wandered there for at least 2 hours. I remember all this vaguely, maybe because the tunnels were very monotonous, maybe because the roof just moved a little, I don't know. I only came to my senses when I tripped over some stone and hit my head hard on the floor. I decided to return, and then a surprise awaited me. Either I didn't notice, or didn't attach any importance to it, but the tunnels were 120 degrees relative to each other. That is, the fork turned out to be 3-sided. No matter which side you approach, it looks like a fork. Attempts to remember how I walked, or to find any traces, were unsuccessful. I wandered there for 3 hours, and not finding a way out, I gave up on this matter and remembered the words of my old man, who taught me to go mushroom picking. He said that this happens in the forest when you walk in circles and never come across the road. There is also a proverb about this. I got lost in 3 pines. So, in such a case, he advised just to sit down and rest. If possible, sleep a little. They say, your brain will fall into place and you won't panic so much. I decided to do just that. I had a snack, laid out a blanket, and collapsed on the side. Come to think of it, his advice worked. Upon awakening, I continued to search for a way out, and within 10 minutes, I saw the stairs going up. I was still happy. Idiot. I thought that was it. I got out. When I got up, I realized that I had climbed out somewhere in the wrong place. The entrance was very similar to mine, but the most incredible squabble reigned in it. In principle, this could not have happened, because the local grandmothers kept the entrance, if not perfectly clean, then certainly in order, and I wasn't gone long enough for everything to be so crap. There's some torn paper and rags everywhere. The lampshades are broken. The light bulbs don't light up. Some stinking puddles all over the floor. Then I reassured myself that it was probably just a very similar place. A typical building. Everything. You just need to go outside, and it will immediately become clear as day. And then a bummer awaited me. This was exactly my entrance. As soon as I stepped out into the yard, I immediately realized it. There could still be a house built, according to the same plan as mine, but not a whole block. All the cars had disappeared somewhere, and in the yard itself, there was no less chaos than in the entrance. There was a whole small lake of the stinking water splashing in the sandbox. Someone had broken the swing almost to the ground, scattering the parts. The doors to other entrances were either tightly closed or lying nearby, knocked out. In general, everything looked as if everyone had suddenly gone crazy, broken and dirtied everything they could reach, and then left in an unknown direction. Mobile phone. You can always call. Fuck it. There was no signal at all. Even an attempt to make an emergency call did not go through with the message, no network. I tried to go up to my apartment, but I couldn't open the door. I tried to knock it down with my shoulder and open it with a key. It was useless. It was like opening a concrete wall. In general, the situation did not look the best. Having thought everything over, I decided to go on reconnaissance, at least to the department store on the corner. I had very little food with me, and also water. I was even glad that I went straight with a hiking backpack. There will be some minimum for survival here, even if I get stuck. In general, I had two options. Either wait here, hoping that everything will be resolved, or return to the basement and further wander, looking for a way out. After thinking carefully, I realized that I had better chances here. If I get lost there again, or if it gets worse than last time, I might die here. But the department store was in even more shape. The display cases were broken, the counters were empty, and in general, everything looked as if no one had been here for 30 years. The iron doors were so rusty that one could naturally look through them. The wooden cabinets on which the food used to stand were so rotten that, when I grabbed the shelf with my hand, it crumbled like soggy bread. And, after thinking carefully, I put forward a theory that I still adhere to. These tunnels may be some kind of time machine or something, and it looks like I ended up in the future, where nuclear fucked up everything or something worse. I think that I left my time and found myself in the future, 30 to 40 years. Maybe it's for the better. If you get me out of here, we can turn to the government. Let them send an expedition here or something. Maybe we can prevent what happened. Well, then I probably won't get here. In general, the devil only knows. I still had a lot of sheets in my notebook, and doing further wanderings, I tried different options, drawing up a map. Along the way, some tunnels should intersect with each other, but this does not happen. Of course, I don't have a tape measure, and I counted the distance in steps, and, perhaps, due to some disorientation, I don't notice the slope of the tunnel. I don't know. I didn't try. I didn't find any other way out. Wherever I tried to take pictures of the tunnel, it was no use. The resulting images were just completely black, like it was dark or something. On the surface, the photos turned out, although their quality leaves much to be desired. I am attaching the available photographs so that you can compare them with the area and understand that I am not a troll or some kind of scammer. Convinced that I wouldn't find anything, or would rather get even more lost in these tunnels, I returned to the apartment. I tried to open it, when suddenly the phone beeped, as if it had received a message. I looked. Not a damn thing. Just when I thought it was a glitch, I automatically opened the notifications and just went crazy. The phone caught the Wi-Fi network of my apartment. At first I wanted to tell my dad what happened, but then I thought, he's a quick guy. He won't listen to me. He'll rush into this basement and get stuck here with me, or even come across another exit, if there is one. As a result, I wrote to my mom and dad that I was delayed on the hike and everything was fine. Thank God I didn't call them that I was going home. They are used to it, so they won't worry for another 2 weeks, and that's okay. I wanted to write to my friends, but they, damn it, won't believe it. And God forbid they call their parents. They will immediately understand that I deceived them, and they will make such a fuss that it will be bad for everyone. Now I will save charge by turning off the phone. I will wait for my replies to my message by coming here once a day. If you decide to help me, please take into account all of the instructions that I will give below. Don't come alone. It's better if you come as a group of 3 for insurance. Take at least a day's worth of supplies with you, just in case. Make a map. You don't have to indicate the distance. It doesn't play a special role. It's even better if you grab some rope, and 2 will walk tied together, and the 3rd, if something happens, will be able to find them, or even pull them out. If you feel like your brain is swimming like I do, you better come back and try again later. In addition to the map and rope, it would be better to make notes with chalk or a marker. I'll probably finish. I've also attached my map with tag IDs, in case you find one of them. The address in which I ask you to come, Street, Sportivnaya, Building 10, 3rd entrance. I'm also including a photo of the door. Fortunately, I took it before going inside. If the door is closed, try to open it, please. And if you just want to save a person, think, you can take this place for yourself if you say, I won't even go to the government. At least arrange something here. I don't care. The main thing is to take me away from here. Of course, with my resources, I can hold out for another 10 or 11 days. I'll wander around the area some more. Maybe I'll find some currant bushes, or something else there. As a last resort, I'll try to distill the water and cook nettle soup. I should definitely find nettles. For the love of God, Anon, I ask you to hurry up. It looks like I'm starting to go crazy from all this. Last night, when I woke up, I saw some shadows moving around in the yard. I blinked my eyes and everything became normal, but I still somehow don't want to be saved, in fear that I will be sent to a mental hospital. I really hope I don't have to stay here forever. And, by the way, just in case you go alone, take some seeds. If we get stuck, you'll have something to plant. Unless, of course, anything can grow here at all. If my phone has enough charge, I will send you new photos.